This is a summary and review for the novel Moby Dick by Herman Melville. This novel was published in 1851, and it begins with this individual by the name of Ishmael. Now, before I even get into the summary of this novel, we have to talk about the history of this novel because this novel has a very interesting history. Herman Melville, when he was writing this novel, when he first published it, he didn't really sell that many copies. This book was not really popular. This book only got popular after or way after Herman Melville's death. Now, most people do not like to read Moby Dick because it's very, very, very long. And in of a way, one can even say it can be like a historical book about whales. But really, this book is not a book to get information about whale. It's not a dictionary. It's not Google. It's not anything like that. There's like 500 pages or a very large number of pages where the narrator Ishmael, who is also a character, he thoroughly describes what whales are, different types of whales. He goes into depth about all types of whale, what they are used for. He glorifies the business of whaling. He says why he explains why whalers should be on the same level, if not higher, than kings and queens. So there's a lot in this novel. It's not just a linear narrative about Moby Dick. It really talks about whales. It talks about Captain Ahab, in which I'll get into later. And it has a very ranging. It has a lot of topics. That's what I'm trying to say. So the novel begins with Ishmael. He has this idea. He wants to be a whaler. He wants to live in the seas for a while and be a part of the business of whaling. And he makes his idea. And before he finds a crew to take him out to be a part of, he meets this guy by the name of Queequeg. Now, Queequeg is not the traditional individual. Queequeg is not like anybody that you've ever met in your life. And I think that Queequeg is the individual that I was hooked. Like I wanted to know more about him when I was reading this novel because Queequeg, he is an alpha. He is the guy that is like, I'm gonna do what I want when I want. He's not. He's fearless. He's like Terminator 500. A new brand of Terminator because Queequeg, in the novel, he's always portrayed as this guy who's mysterious, as this guy who has his own will that he's gonna do what he wants when he wants. And I think his character is a very it's not orthodox. It's very it's very unorthodox. That's what I can say. So I really like his character, and he and Ishmael they become really really great friends. Ishmael is an individual. He has religion on his side. He believes in God. He's a very devout Christian. But he's also open-minded because Queequeg is not a Christian. He's a cannibal. He has all types of tattoos and signs all over his body. He's a very different individual. And in the novel, at first, Ishmael was disgusted. He was, he didn't want to participate in anything where Queequeg was. But the more the novel progresses, the more Ishmael sees that Queequeg is an individual that you want to be friends with, is an individual that is very valuable. And in the end, Queequeg basically saves his life. So that's how the novel begins. We see Ishmael and Queequeg, they become friends. The novel starts with Ishmael lodging in this place, and this place is very packed, and he had to share a room with a stranger. And this is how him and Queequeg met. Queequeg was that stranger, and he lodged with him. And the first night where they had to share a room, I can guarantee you that Ishmael was afraid for his life. So that's how it begins. And after that encounter, Ishmael and Queequeg, they were the best of friends. They became basically brothers. Um, so the story progresses, and these individuals, Queequeg and Ishmael, they become workers on a boat, a ship called the Pequod. Now the Pequod is a very interesting ship. The book goes through this very long description of all of its owners, of all of the people who are investing in this ship, all of the orphans are investing in the ship, and a whole long list of people that like whose lives are dependent are on the success of this ship. And the captain of his ship is by the name of Ahab. Now, before I even go any further, um, one thing I would like to note is that Moby Dick has a lot of religious references. Specifically, it has a lot of references on Christian references to the story of Jonah. If you know the story of Jonah, you know that Jonah disobeyed God, and he was swallowed by a great fish, and this fish delivered him to Nineveh. And Ishmael kind of says that Moby Dick might have been that fish, the Jonah fish. He refers to Moby Dick, Ishmael refers to Moby Dick as Leviathan. That's also another sea monster from the Bible. He refers to Moby Dick. It's not direct, but it's suggested that Moby Dick might even be a omnipotent being. Or maybe he's just an omnipotent being in terms of nature. Um, there's a lot of way we can interpret this to be, but Moby Dick can be different things to different people. Let's leave that there. So the novel continues. Queequeg and Ishmael, they become workers on Pequod, and their captain is Captain Ahab. Even the name Ahab and Ishmael, they are biblical names, and it would take another video for me to explain the intersections between the definition of these names and these characters. Ahab, real quick, for the name of Ahab, Captain Ahab in the novel, and Ahab in the Bible. Let's just do a quick comparison of these two. Um, Ahab in the Bible was not a good king. He's in the Book of Kings, um, and he was married to um, Jezebel, and Jezebel was a horrible queen. I'm not sure whether it's the first book of Kings or Second Kings, but in one of those books, Ahab was married to Jezebel, and Jezebel killed a lot of prophets, and she corrupted Ahab. And Ahab, the name Ahab can mean different things, but in my perspective, when I was reading Moby Dick, I could see mirrored reflections of Captain Ahab and Ahab in the Bible. The reason why it's because Captain Ahab was bent. He would not listen to the voice of reason. He would not obey God. And what I mean by that is um, there are, different messages of godlike power in Moby Dick, but Captain Ahab is so driven, is so determined to kill Moby Dick because Moby Dick ripped his leg from the knee down. Because of that, he has this revenge, he has this vendetta, he has this anger that he wants to basically repay or get back at Moby Dick for what Moby Dick did to him. So that's really what this novel follows. Um, Queequeg, Ishmael, Captain Ahab, and the rest of the crew. There's a lot of people on this boat, a lot of different characters, but generally, this whole crew they set out to sea, and right away, Captain Ahab said that we don't care about anything else. All we want is to kill Moby Dick. All we want is to get Moby Dick. We don't care about any other whales. And this is what's very I thought was very detrimental in the novel because they had several opportunities to where they could kill other whales, to where they can profit and be successful and make money off of other whales. But they leave these whales behind. They even kill whales very easily. But they leave those behind because Captain Ahab said he has nothing to do with those whales. All he wants is this white whale by the name of Moby Dick that is known as a leviathan, that is known as a whale above other whales because Moby Dick doesn't play. Moby Dick, he does what he wants. You can't touch him. You basically can't hunt him because he'll destroy your ship. So Captain Ahab, he's bent. He's ready to give his life to kill Moby Dick. And so that's how the novel is set up. That's how the novel begins, and that's how we are led into the novel. You know, a lot of people don't read Moby Dick because it's very long, and I can understand why. Because after we're introduced to this introduction, we go through at least 300 to 500 pages of Ishmael. This character, Ishmael, he is the narrator, 500 pages or 300 to 500 pages of him talking about whales, and it can be to different people. It can be a little bit daunting or boring because you leave this great narrative, and you're dropped into this long description of different types of whales, of what they're used for, and it goes on and talks about how we should respect the business of whaling. And you know honestly, I didn't think it was boring for myself because I think it added more to um the individual, to the reader, to really understand what whaling is. Because without those 500 pages, you really wouldn't understand how much whaling meant to society, how much whaling, um, you know, it's in all parts of life, kind of. Because um, Ishmael describes that when you coronate kings and queens, you're gonna use the oil that is used from sperm whales, candles, other types of things. There's so many different things and products and goods that is used, that whale, like dead whale carcasses, they're used for different types of products, and that's one of the main points that Ishmael was trying to prove by that long, very long description of whales and why they're hunted and what they're used for. So after that description, after that long passage, we go back to the narrative. We see the Pequod, the ship. It's starting to get close to where Moby Dick is. They spend a long time trying to find Moby Dick. They couldn't find him. When they finally find him, Captain Ahab, he's ready to go. Okay, he. This is like the main event. This is the novel really builds up to it. Believe me, after you read that much, you read all those descriptions, you read all the intensity that is packed in. You are ready for a fight. You're in the corner. You got your popcorn ready because as you're reading this novel, it's building this confrontation between Moby Dick and Captain Ahab, and in some parts you're like, is Moby Dick even a whale? Because it seems that he's thinking on more, on a higher level than a whale should. because he's maneuvering different ships. He's bringing them down, and other whales can't do this. Um, One interesting part is that there's this other captain, the captain of the Rachel, or there's another boat that comes in, another ship that comes in, and its captain, his arm was taken off by Moby Dick. So, you know, Captain Ahab, his leg was taken off by Moby Dick, and this other captain, his arm was taken off ripped off by Moby Dick. So you're like, is Moby Dick, does he know that he's doing this? Does he know that he's crippling people? I mean, is he just an animal, or does he have the ability to think? You think of that in while you're reading this novel. But the novel does continue. Uh, they do meet a ship, the Pequod, Captain Ahab. They do meet a ship by the name of the Rachel, and the captain of that ship. They were looking for a missing child. The captain had lost his son, and the captain said to Captain Ahab to help him find his son. And Captain Ahab was like, "I don't have time for you. I need to kill Moby Dick." So he sets off. They chase Moby Dick for 3 days in the sea, and it's the impact, the blockbuster event where Captain Ahab, he's fierce, he's ready to do anything it takes to kill Moby Dick. I'm pretty sure he would even give his soul to kill Moby Dick at this point. And Moby Dick, he's a whale that, he's not like any other type of whale. He's ready to fight for his life. And the battle goes on and on. And in the end, Moby Dick, in the most alpha way, he attacks the ship. He brings down the Pequod, and Captain Ahab, he's like, I'm not dying without revenge. So he flings his harpoon. Moby Dick drags Captain Ahab down to the bottom of the sea. Ahab dies. The ship goes down, and the only survivor is Ishmael. And in the end, the Rachel, that ship, they found Ishmael in the sea drifting, and they take him aboard, and he tells the story of Moby Dick. So that's the general summary of this novel. Again, this novel has so many parts. It's so complex that it should take like 30 videos to really explain the all of the parts of this novel. Because Moby Dick, the novel depicts him as this whale, uh, who is above other whales. The interesting thing is that Moby Dick is this white whale. Whales are not white, right? And he looks different. He has a crooked jaw and all these different things about him. It's like he thinks differently, he acts differently, he looks differently. Um, for Captain Ahab, one interesting thing is that um, he's a man who, um, you know, he does not play by the cards that he is dealt. Life dealt him cards, and whoever dealt the cards to him, Captain Ahab is like, I'm gonna spit in your face because I do what I want when I want. This guy is crippled. A whale takes off your leg. Just stay on land, right? Find another life. But no, he says, I'm going to get back at the whale for doing this to me, for crippling me. And even though he had no leg, he goes out to sea to kill a whale that hurt him. So he's an alpha character. Moby Dick is an alpha character because they're like, no one can control them, no one can tell them what to do. They'll do what they want to do. That's their mentality. Um, so really, that's really the novel. Pretty much everybody in the Pequod, the ship dies. Queequeg, even though he was my favorite character, and anybody who reads this novel, Queequeg is someone that you will like because he's just that guy who looks death in the eyes and challenges death to a fight. That's how I can describe Queequeg, because he's just completely fearless. He'll dive, into danger, however it comes to him. But in the end, he does die in the novel. Everybody else dies. The only survivor is Ishmael, and a lot of the things that are said in Moby Dick, Some of it's poetic, some of it is a narrative, some of it. Some people have taken Moby Dick to be a like Google on whales, but Moby Dick is not Google on whales. Okay. Yes, it does deliver a lot of information about different types of whales, what they're used for, what different purposes that you can use the carcass of a whale for. But Moby Dick is a narrative. It's a story. It's a novel. It's not a bibliography. It's not a documentary. Um, it's just a narrative about Captain Ahab and this whale and Ishmael and Queequeg. Very interesting novel. Um, it talks a lot about religion. It talks about a lot about if you read this novel, you should read it at least 2 or 3 times. The first time is just for the narrative. The second time you could really read it for religious aspects because there is a lot. Starting with the story of Jonah, continuing with Ishmael, who he is in the Bible, who Ahab is in the Bible, their characters and how they reflect different characters in the Bible, why their names are their names. There's religious, there's philosophy, poetry. This novel is really compact, and I think it should be one of the number one books in the world because um, there's just so much in it. And I know a lot of people think it's tedious. It is a very long read, but I think after you're done reading this novel, you're gonna want to read it again because it just says so much about different aspects of life and mankind. Because again, Captain Ahab, he was so hell bent on getting revenge on this whale that he was willing to give the lives of all the people that he knew. He gave out his ship. He gave out everything. He even gave out his life, his soul, everything, just to get back at this whale. And in the end, even though that him and Moby Dick go down to the bottom of the sea together, um, the novel doesn't say clearly that Moby Dick dies. It does state that Captain Ahab and everybody else except Ishmael dies, but I think there's sufficient evidence to prove or to deny that Moby Dick is not dead. It's not. I'm not saying he's alive. I'm not saying he's dead. I'm just saying that I don't see exact or clear information saying that Captain Ahab killed Moby Dick in the end. So that's my summary. That's my review of this novel. If this helped you in any way, please leave a like, subscribe, and tell me how this helped you. Leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.